Welcome back to another episode of the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Corey Jason, John Pauline, Ben Mandel. September baseball. Races are tighter. People are falling out of contention. Teams are solidifying themselves as possible contenders. Got some movement in the odds in regards to some awards. We'll discuss a lot of that this week and in the coming weeks. But I first want to start off with two sad passings away, some death in the baseball world. Mets legend Ed Kranepool passed away, 79 years old. He was the longest tenured Met, playing in Queens for 18 years and won the 1969, you got to believe, World Series with the Mets. Ben, as a Mets fan, what did Kranepool mean to the franchise?
Look, he's one of those guys that, longest tenured, I think, really kind of goes under the radar. Kranepool wasn't always one. He's not known as like Mr. Met, but for anybody who's a part of that 69 team is special. It's your first one, especially, the years that the team went through leading up to that. But that was clearly, it was a big piece and a big player for this organization for an extended period of time. So it definitely is saddening, and it's tough to see. At least the Mets were able to get a win in his honor on that day.
And then also we did have James Earl Jones pass away today at 93 years old. Everybody knows him as the voice of Darth Vader, but also
the voice of everything.
Mufasa, Field of Dreams, Mr. Myrtle in The Sandlot, one of my favorites. Meant a lot to the baseball world. And just a really sad day with these two like iconic people in their respective fields passing away. But on a, happier note, Kumar Rocker will be making his MLB debut on Thursday, the 12th, for the Rangers. He was drafted in the first round, 10th overall by the Mets. Didn't sign because the Mets did not like his medicals. Instead of going back to college, he signed in the Frontier League while retaining his eligibility. Then the next year, he wasn't viewed as a top 10 pick, but the Rangers surprised everybody, took him third overall. And, 3 years later, he's going to be starting for them in a rotation that's going to have him, Jack Leiter, Max Scherzer, and Jacob deGrom. So a lot of, heavy hitters in that rotation. Interesting to see how Rocker's going to start off. He's the Rangers' number 2 prospect, number 97 in the MLB 100, a really good player who has had to face some adversity early on.
I think it's special because you're not often going to see guys like that who don't get signed, then turn around the next year, get drafted higher, and then are making it. They're a top prospect in baseball. They're a top prospect in the organization. And for Texas's sake, what do you have to lose? I mean, they have the potential to have an absolutely outstanding rotation next year and to build some excitement with it, with Kumar Rocker, whether he's great right now or let him work out some kinks in the big leagues right now.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. Yankees, they called up Jason Dominguez. He's playing against the Royals today, starting off that series. First player in Major League Baseball history now to have 4 home runs and 2 stolen bases in his first 10 games in the big leagues.
2 years
Crazy. No. 1 year apart.
No, it's like a year apart, but still, like the fact that, he got hurt, and I know the injury he had isn't something that, you would expect to really keep a position player from bouncing back from, but hey, he hasn't missed a step.
Yeah, he hasn't. He had that injury that ended his season last year, the Tommy John, quote unquote, that didn't really need a Tommy John. He had a new type of way to heal that injury. Kept him out till, the midsummer. Then he had an oblique injury, kept him out longer. Then the Yankees kept him down, to manipulate service time, because if they brought him up earlier and he lost rookie eligibility, they wouldn't be getting a comp pick in the first round, next year if he ends up winning Rookie of the Year. And that's kind of what they're playing at, because if he does win Rookie of the Year next year, my guy will be a rookie in 3 different seasons. The Yankees get a first-round comp pick, which is smart on them. That's the best way to build a team. Next thing, though, is Shohei Ohtani. He's at a 46-46 season, the first one ever. how far can this thing go? I mean, 50-50, obviously. Can we see a 55-55? Like, where does this end? And if he does it again next year, does it make it as special?
I mean, look, with the stolen bases, it's always going to be a little bit like hindered. But at the same time, I mean, no one's even sniffed what Otani's been doing. I believe 40-40 from Canseco, if I'm not mistaken, was the
I mean,
closest we had before that.
A-Rod's, I believe, had a 40-40.
Okay. But, like, still, the stolen bases, it's definitely impressive. I know with the new stolen base rules, it kind of helps him out a little bit there. But the home
Yeah,
runs are fantastic, doing it with the injury, and not to mention the fact he's doing it, while trying to rehab and get ready to pitch again. So it is impressive. I think he might not be able to do quite what he's doing every year just because he's going to be pitching as well, and that's the plan.
right.
He's not planning on just focusing on hitting, but it's definitely impressive. I think 55-55 is pushing it a little bit at this point in the season, asking him for 10 more home runs. I believe it would be 9 more home runs at this point. It's definitely a stretch, but if someone can do it, it's Ohtani.
I think 50-50 is more in the realm probably of possibility, probably.
So, I mean, are we making a bigger deal of this than it is because it's Ohtani? Because, I mean, 50-50 is great, but we've had 40-40. And, if a player's capable of 40-40, they are capable of a 50-50, I believe. Because when you're hitting,
I'm sorry, Corey.
just because when you're capable of stealing 40 bags, I think you're more than capable of stealing 50. It's just you have to pick the right times throughout the year. You could have gotten 10 more. It's definitely something that you're able to do. And, if you're able to, when you hit 40 home runs, a lot of these 40-40s weren't literally 40 home runs. They were 45, 46, 47 home runs and 40 bags. So that puts 50 in the realm of possibilities. And a lot of these guys that did have 40-40 seasons have had 50 home run seasons. So I think it's something that, was always possible to do. And this is just the first time we're seeing it put together.
I don't know if it's necessarily always been possible unless, Ricky Henderson had the ability to hit 40 or 50 home runs in a season, because before the stolen base rules, you weren't seeing people stealing more than 30 bags in a season on a regular basis. I mean, like that's just the reality of it. And on top of that, I think what is being most overlooked about this, yeah, you know what, if you're a 40-40 guy, you likely can be 50-50 because you have the ability to swipe those bags. But part of why you're not able to steal that many bases is because 50 of your hits, you weren't even standing on base. So let's say you get 150 to 180 hits in a season. You're on base 100 of those times to 130, that's like you're taking away 50 of those opportunities that you're on base to begin with. And then, you're factor in the extra base hits. Odds are, if you're getting on second base, you're not stealing third. So most of the time you're stealing second base. When you're a guy who gets a lot of those, you're a big power guy, you don't have the opportunity to steal that many bases, mostly because either you have guys on in front of you or you're just not on first base enough.
But like, then Acuna had to do a 40-70 last year. Like,
right.
I mean, I think that's what he said. Like, I think we're probably making people are making big deals because it is Ohtani, too. I mean, it's impressive, but I think it's getting looked at more because it is Ohtani.
4 years ago, 100% means something different than it does now because of the new stolen base rules. You can't
What's more
deny
impressive, 50-50 or 40-70? What's more impressive?
Well, I would say the 50-50 just because, Acuna's 40-70. Like I said, the home runs, those are still just as hard. But the stolen bases are no longer as hard as they used to be. There is the pitch clock. There are the limited amount of times you could throw over. There's the shorter bases. Like, or the shorter pathways to the bases because of the bigger bases.
Yeah,
so,
true.
like, these are a lot of things. People say baseball's a game of inches. They made the base paths a perfect length because of how close every play is. Well, that 6 inches makes a huge difference when stealing a base, especially when you know the pitcher can't throw over.
You're right. You're right.
Really?
I just think that a lot of times when it comes to Ohtani, what he does is blown out of proportion compared to what it would be if it was Acuna or Bobby Witt or Kyle Tucker, another big name star. But because it's Ohtani, I feel like it's kind of made to be a bigger deal than it is. And that's no disrespect to Ohtani. That's more the media and how the media treats him. And I just think he's I think it's almost a detriment to him because he's such a great player. But like, he's being talked about a lot of as what he could be and what he has shown in the past, but not what he's doing now. Like, he won the Rookie of the Year, not because he deserved it, but because, oh, look, he can pitch. He can hit, he can pitch. Not that he did it, but that he could do it. So he's kind of, he can do no wrong. But I kind of want to move into our division predictions right now. We have a few more weeks left in the season. We'll talk about, more of the awards in the coming weeks. But if we take a look right now, there's some tight division races. So starting with the National League, we have the Dodgers. They're up 6 games on the Padres and 6.5 on the Diamondbacks. Do we think either of those teams have a real shot at the division? Or is it just the Dodgers and nobody else?
I think the Dodgers just have it. I mean,
I agree.
Padres are good, and the Diamondbacks are 6.5 out too. But I mean, the Dodgers. I mean, I don't see, like, at this point in the season, I don't think there's any way they blow that 6-game lead.
They're not the Mets. They're not the Mets. And at the end of the day, the Padres and Diamondbacks have been playing 500 baseball lately. I don't necessarily see it. Honestly, especially the way the wild card race has been going in the National League, you almost think that the Mets and Braves have a better chance of catching the Diamondbacks and Padres than the Padres and Diamondbacks do of catching the Dodgers.
Next up is the Central. Milwaukee's up 9 games on the Cubs, 10 games on the Cardinals. I think it's safe to say to write this one off.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
Oh, I was just saying, I think the Brewers have just been the more dominant team in that NL Central this season than any of the rest. I mean, I know I thought it was going to be a lot closer. Like, it was going to be within, maybe 6 games, 5 games going into this stretch right here. But I think the Brewers been clearly the best team coming out of that division this season.
Well,
Now the NL
they
East.
won. I'm sorry. No, the Cubs won their last game, but they had their streak. They lost 3 in a row after that. I believe it was 9 in a row they won. So, they got hot and then got cold again. So, yeah, they're 6-4 still in their last 10, but 9 games back, that's just too steep a hill to climb.
Yeah, they're not bad. They just couldn't keep up that level of play to catch up.
And then in the National League, you have the Phillies up 7 games on the Mets now. Mets have overtaken the Braves. Braves are 8 back of the Phillies, 1 of the Mets. Ben, do the Mets have a shot?
They have a shot. You have 6 games coming up against Philly, I believe. Maybe even 7. Yep. I haven't looked at the schedule exactly.
2 series.
But
they have
2 series coming up.
Home and an away.
Mets are 9-1 in the last 10.
So,
yeah, I will be there for one of those games at Citi Field. I had to jump on tickets. It's a big series against Philly. Yeah, the division's within reach because they have all those games against Philly. If they didn't, I would say no. That's too steep a hill to climb. But if the Mets can go out and win 5 of those games, oh boy, we've got a race.
Let's see.
And that's fun. Everybody, that's what we want. We want to see a fun race.
7 games coming up. They have a 3-game series in Philly and then a 4-game series at home The Mets.
Yep. So
So I mean,
there we go.
I mean, right there, that's the division, and those two.
And the Mets are being carried by their Latin pop star.
If the Mets go 4-3, you're only gaining a game. So look, the Mets have to win 5 minimum just to keep it close, just to make it a competition. But
And they got to hope the Braves
schedule
lose too.
The Mets get the Braves and Phillies this month. That's it. They have a very, very easy schedule. The Mets should be able to go 2-3, win 2 out of every 3 for the rest of the way. That's the expectation.
That would put
I don't
them in
know
a good
if it's
spot.
going to be enough to get them the division, though.
They have a chance. Mets play Phillies, Braves, and that, like the last stretch of the year, like the regular season here. So I mean, they win. They win those series. I mean, you're looking at the Mets sneaking in first. Hopefully not.
But the Mets are a dangerous team. If the Mets can sneak into the playoffs, whereas right now they are, 1 game up on that final wild card, the Mets are not a team I'd want to face in October with how they've been playing.
Especially, since June, they've been the best team in baseball. They've hit the cover off the ball. Francisco Lindor has been unbelievable. The pitching, that's where you're gonna run into some hiccups. But hey, Severino's been strong. The bullpen's been good since they reworked it. They added some pieces that have worked. Quintana's been okay. David Peterson, revelation this year. He's been fantastic. He's eating innings. He's been great lately. It's just going to come down to, is it enough? I don't think they have enough pitching, but ultimately we didn't think they had enough pitching coming into the season. So for them to be sitting where they are with what they have, I hate to say it, but Carlos Mendoza, he's bought himself some time.
I mean, Senga's going to be back, isn't he?
I was under the impression he's done for the year.
I thought he was planning on. I thought he was coming back if for October baseball was the plan.
I was under the impression he's done, but I could be out of date on that.
No, I mean, one of us is right, one of us isn't. We'll find out if he ever pitches again when he comes on.
Optimism building that Senga will return this year. Still, though, even if Senga comes back, you're not getting more 3 or 4 innings out of him in a start.
No, but that definitely helps lengthen.
But sometimes that's all you need in the playoffs. If you're in the playoffs, sometimes that's all you need is like 3 or 4 innings.
Piggyback him with McGill.
They have some weapons in that bullpen. Like Buto can go a couple innings. They have some arms. Senga definitely makes things better for them. It's just the Mets they don't have that ace
with their players. Like when you go to a Mets game and Budo comes in and everybody in the stands is just yelling Budo, 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 Budo. Like it's fun. The energy there is fun.
No, they definitely do a great job there. You got Big Justice bringing the boom on home runs. Look, it's definitely a fun atmosphere. Steve Jones doing the best he can. Well, no, they I don't know if he's a Mets guy exactly. I could see them being big Yankee fans. To be honest,
that's the vibe I got from them.
When the Mets hit a home run, they play OMG.
Right, of course.
As they cross the plate, in the background, in between, like they pause OMG for a second, they fade it out, and then you have him yell, Big Justice and his dad yelling, "We bring the boom!" And then it goes back into OMG.
OMG is so catchy.
It really is catchy, and honestly, it's just fun. It's a fun song. It's fun that your backup utility infielder is the one who
starter now that McNeil's out
sang it.
What is McNeil being out for them?
The lineup loses a little bit of life. It's basically it. With other guys back in the outfield, it's not that big of a deal. If Marte was still not anywhere to be found, all of a sudden it becomes a bigger issue. But you just end up with a better glove, not as good of a bat. But still, the way McNeil was hitting as a whole this year, it's not the end of the world. He had been getting better, so that's where it kind of sucks. But
Let's go to the American League, though. AL West. Houston is up 4.5 on Seattle, 7.5 on the Rangers, the defending world champions. I mean, this is right now the closest out of all the divisions that we've discussed. But Houston has been playing a lot better than the rest of their division. You know, Seattle, I believe, had like a double-digit lead at one point this year, and that's fallen by the wayside. Do we think Seattle has it in them to come back, especially with Luis Castillo possibly being injured?
I mean, they have it in them just because there is just loads of talent on this roster. I just don't know if Houston has a collapse in them, to be honest with you. And I think that, Seattle has a tough series coming up this weekend against those Rangers. And that's not going to be an easy series because defending world champions, they're getting healthier, especially in the pitching department. So, I mean, who knows? It's not going to be an easy series for them. It's just Seattle. They have a lot of wins they have to try to find in tough places.
Yeah.
I think the Astros just to win it. I mean, I don't know. I just don't see the Mariners I just don't see them making up those wins, even though it's not that many. I just don't see them doing it. And I don't know if I see the Astros falling apart.
I believe it was Seattle. Seattle had a lead on Houston last year, I believe, and Texas, and blew it to both of them.
That makes sense. I mean, Texas, everybody was kind of writing them off in June, and then they've kind of rebounded.
We wrote the Rangers off. There was that one, it was just you and me, Ben. It was just, and
I'm never going to live that down.
We literally
we need to start posting more on the TikTok too, because right now it's like the most recent TikTok sitting up there.
It was like I think it was the last one. It was just us going in on the Rangers and being like that. They're
I was just shredding them apart, writing them off, called them dead in the water. Said Bruce Bochy, do something, be the World Series manager you are.
I think it's just every time you say something, like it's just the opposite happens. Like,
how's Jurickson Profar doing?
Yeah, I mean, like the same thing you said about Jurickson Profar, and then
see, in fairness, I didn't say that Jurickson Profar was going to suck. I just said I didn't like him.
You said he didn't deserve to be an all-star.
Well, I stand.
This is just what happens.
Well, let's go to the AL Central now. That's got Cleveland up 3 games on Kansas City and 5.5 on Minnesota. All 3 of these teams have a real shot to win this division.
I don't think Minnesota.
No?
I don't think Minnesota has a chance. They're another team that's, like Kansas City, playing sub-500 baseball their last 10. They're not gaining ground when they have the chance. Like, Cleveland and Kansas City have given Minnesota the chance, and Minnesota has not run with it. They're not scoring enough runs. They're not winning games decisively enough. Honestly, Minnesota, this is what happens when you play in a division that has real competition. Minnesota can't just cakewalk to a title, and that's what they had been able to do in the past. But now Cleveland and Kansas City are real baseball teams.
Yeah.
I mean, the AL Central is basically what I thought the NL Central was going to be this year. I mean, like with how close the race is at the end of the year there, but most likely Minnesota is going to be that third wildcard team, and it's going to be, the Royals, fighting for that number 1 spot there in the division, and then whoever, loses that. I mean, either way, I feel like those 3 teams are making the playoffs regardless, whether it be, coming in first or one of the wildcard teams.
Now we got the AL East, the closest matchup in all of baseball. Yankees up 1.5 games on Baltimore after today, with Boston 10 back. Yankees have 3 against Baltimore to end the year, the last week of the year. They end against Pittsburgh. But it's going to come down to the very last day of the season, I think, for this matchup. And I really don't know who's going to win it. The Yankees have now surpassed their win total from last year with 83 wins. 9 years in a row of having a winning record, which is pretty crazy. But I just don't know who's going to win this division. I think right now, whoever wins this division is probably the favorites coming out of the American League. Although for the Yankees, I think they need to go past Houston in order for me to feel any type of confidence about them. That's kind of like the one team, get that off your back, defeat the ghosts of Christmas past.
See,
How
So
would you feel if they didn't even have to play Houston though?
terrified.
Like if Houston got knocked out,
Terrified.
That's what I mean. Houston has a much more difficult path this year because look, there's a chance that they could jump Cleveland and get one of those buys, but there's a good chance that Houston is playing on wild card weekend, having to play that 3-game series and then turn around, having to play a 5-game series, which would likely be up against Cleveland. That's not going to be easy, especially because they're going on the road. I could see Houston having some trouble and being a bit more banged up or worn out having to play the Yankees. Because when you think about it, Houston's only had to play 3 or 4 games in the playoffs before meeting the Yankees each time.
It's true. But we'll know more, obviously, as things kind of shake out. Right now, the way that things are looking in the playoffs, Yankees have that 1 seed. They would get that first-round bye. Cleveland in second, Houston in third. Plus, you have Baltimore, Kansas City, and Minnesota being your wild card teams. Boston, Detroit, Seattle, all 3 out, with Tampa Bay 5 out. Then in the National League side, you have the Dodgers at the 1. They get the bye. Phillies at 2, Milwaukee at 3. San Diego, Arizona, and the Mets are your wild card teams. But then you have Atlanta 1 out, the Cubs 5.5 out, and St. Louis 6.5 out. So St. Louis, I think, is probably where I would say you're not going to make it. But the Cubs, if they can go on a hot streak and any of the teams ahead of them falter, there's still enough time to make up 5.5 games with some luck on your side. So
Yeah,
look, separating.
They can do it.
On the National League side, there's probably 8 teams that could realistically make up the 6 spots. And then for the American League, there's 9, 10 teams that can make up the 6 spots.
There's a lot in the American League. I mean, looking at the wild card thing, I mean, you have like 3 teams, 3 games back.
Right. Then you also have the Rangers 6 out. So,
6.
I mean, I wouldn't write them off yet either.
The Rays are
especially with the division rivals, ahead of them, where they still have some games left against them.
So, I mean, having that 3rd wild card spot really, really makes these races a lot closer.
Yeah.
Well, think about what happened when they added the second. The second wild card made the playoff races seem that much more intense. Now, all of a sudden, you add that 3rd one in there, and it really keeps teams. I mean, think about it. The Mets probably were sellers at the trade deadline if there was not a 3rd wild card this year.
What was
just
that 3rd
because
wild
of how
card
poorly
spot?
they started.
Right, but then how it shook out is the Mets are 1.5 or 2.5 back of the top wild card now. Like the Mets are
but they probably weren't banking on being able to make up that much ground.
Well, of course. So it's even crazier to think about how the Mets would have been sellers without the 3rd wild card. But now that they didn't sell, it's not even the 3rd wild card. They should be after, obviously the division, but even just a top wild card spot, which they're more than capable of getting.
Yeah, especially with those games against Philly coming up, the division is still within reach.
But let's go on to our studs and duds, because we got a Philly star in there. But for me, my stud, Chris Sale, third place Atlanta Braves, their starter, 1-0, 13 innings, right? 2 games started, no earned runs, gave up 8 hits, and struck out 16 in 13 innings, averaging over a strikeout an inning.
National League Cy Young this
year. He's got to be. And then my dud, Nolan Jones of the Rockies. Has to be. Nolan Jones of the Rockies, the outfielder, in 4 games, 13 at-bats, he struck out 10 times, walked once, had 1 RBI, 2 hits. He was hitting 154 with a 354 OPS. That's just brutal to have 13 at-bats and strike out 10 times.
That's just the Rockies for you.
You guys, who are your studs and duds?
So for me, my stud, I'm going with John's guy.
Yeah, I left him there
John,
for you.
Take it. I always go first.
Oh no, I left them there for you. You go.
always
You go.
go
Talk
first,
about
you take it.
the Phillies. No,
All right.
talk about the Phillies.
Yeah. All right. I'll talk about your guy. So my stud, it's gonna be Kyle Schwarber. How is this guy? I picked last. I don't know how none of you guys took this guy. John, I get it. You're trying to stay away from the Phillies. You're always taking the
spread
Phillies.
it
I get
out a
it.
little bit,
Look,
given
Kyle
some
Schwarber,
other player stuff.
7 games, 12 RBIs, 6 home runs, a 433 batting average, a 1600 OPS. Enough said. Kyle Schwarber, monster week. My dud. I'm going it is another Kyle. Liking the Kyles today. But my dud, it's Kyle Stowers, Miami. He ended up with 22 at-bats in 6 games last week, 11 strikeouts. So he had more strikeouts than your guy, Corey. More at-bats, though. He did work 2 walks, but a measly OPS of .083. A 0 batting average, 0 hits in those 22 at-bats. Tough go of it for Kyle Stowers. To be honest, I don't know how you are still in a lineup after that. I don't care if it's for Miami.
My stud this week, Baltimore Oriole, Gunnar Henderson, 10 hits, 3 home runs, 5 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, and only struck out once. So, not as good as Kyle Schwarber, but still pretty good. And my dud is, a pitcher who's, known to be pretty good and stuff, but hasn't been too great this year. Has been hurt a lot. Justin Verlander. He pitched, 7 2/3 innings, has 2 losses, gave up 16 hits, 13 earned runs, 5 walks, only struck out 3 guys, and he now has a 5.3 ERA and a 1.38 WHIP. And it's looking like he might not. There's questions if he is even going to pitch in the playoffs. If if they come in, and it's like, and you wonder if if the Astros are even going to make it to the playoffs with him pitching like that, because that hurts big time.
Now, John, I think you know what time it is.
I do know what time it is.
Time for a little Pauline's prospect powwow. Pull up a chair, close your eyes, and listen to John tell us how it is.
So this week, not last week, but 2 podcasts ago, I think we did it was either the AL West or NL West. And this week, I'm going to do a little different. We're not going to do any guessing. We're going to do a little quick. I'm going to read off the names and then
AL
read
West.
AL West. I knew it was one of them. I'm just going to read off their prospect page on the MLB website, some stuff off, so we can get through it a little quicker. But this week, we're doing the NL East first round picks. And we're going to start it off with Carson Benger. No, Benj? Carson Benj, I think that's pronounced it. He was drafted by the Mets in the first round, 19th overall out of Oklahoma State. Bats left. He's 21, 6'1". ETA is 2027. Already had Tommy John surgery. So
He's
I
a
guess
pitcher?
I don't think he was a pitcher. It just says I guess he was a pitcher, but they handled him more carefully as a pitcher last year, and I guess now he's going to be a outfielder full time. It looks like, because he was a 2-way player. So, but I guess with the Tommy John surgery, I guess they're probably going to go full hitter and stuff. He has good bat to ball skills, high exit velocities. He controls the strike zone, uses the opposite field well. He has average speed, quicker once he gets going. He's a solid defender, plus arm strength in right field, and can maybe play center field. He's a quick armed. He throws 96 mile per hour pitching, so it's a really good arm. He's a solid slider, so who knows if the Mets will use him as a 2-way player, or they'll just focus on him being a hitter. So it's hard to say. Next guy we got up. Oh no, he was also ranked 18th in the draft. I forgot to say that. Next guy we got up, Dante Nori, who was ranked 48th in the draft. Phillies took him 27th overall in the first round out of, I think, Northville High School in, think Milwaukee.
And what was
So,
his name?
Dante Nori. He's an outfielder. He's 19 years old, 5'10", bats left, throws left. His ETA is 2028. He was, I believe he was this year's oldest high school player in the pipeline rankings. So not too sure. They say believe his all-around tools are comparable to Alec Thomas at the same stage, and think he's a better bet to hit than fellow Michigan prepster Caleb Bonamere. His grandfather, Fred Nori, recruited Kyle Schwarber to Indiana as an assistant coach. And his father, Micah, is a longtime NBA assistant coach with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So this guy, seems athletics run in his family here. So,
Yeah.
I mean, stuff. So he's part of the Division I championship team this spring. He has a mature approach at the plate. He's strong and shows average power during batting practice. He focuses on producing line drives rather than launching balls during games. So he has posts top of the scale 60-yard dash times, well above average runner. He's a Mississippi State commit. He chases balls down from the gap to gap. So he's like a no doubt center fielder, and he's physically maxed out but he's plenty of talent, and scouts love his makeup as well. So another solid outfielder for the Phillies, but probably won't see him for a while. And you don't even know if they're going to be that. Some of these guys, these teams draft them, and like half the time, you don't even see him come up for the team that they were drafted to. Next player we got up. He's ranked 15th in the draft, and he was taken 24th overall by the Braves. Cam Clemente. He's a left-handed pitcher, 18 years old, 6'2". ETA is 2028. He's a cousin of Ken Clemente, who is taught to be one of the best players in the 2025 draft class when he reclassified to 24. So he's the potential to have 4 legitimate pitches in the futures with a fastball that can touch 98. So he has a nice curveball, nice slider, but they have inconsistent finishes. So he has a lot of athleticism and stuff when he's playing, but he'll be able to use his repeatable delivery to be a consistent strike thrower. He committed to LSU, so there's a chance to be the first Arizona prep pitcher to be taken in the first round since Matthew Liberatore when he went number 16 overall to the Rays in 2018. But I'm not sure if he signed or not, because like these things don't tell me if he signed or not. So I'm not sure with these high school players if they sign or I don't know when they have to sign by. Because I feel like you see a lot of players going in and committing to going to college more so than not these days. Next up, we have the 45 ranked pitcher, not the 43rd ranked pitcher, 43rd ranked player in the draft, PJ Morlando. He was taken 16th overall by the Marlins. He's another high schooler, 19, 6'3", bats left. He's an outfielder. So he won the home run derby and MVP award at his high school All-American game at the All-Star game last July. He's also starred with the U.S. 18 and under team in each of the last 2 years. But his stock dropped this spring amid questions about his usable power and athleticism, making it unlikely that'll go in the first round, they said, but looks like he won in the first round anyway. So he was Gatorade South Carolina Prep Player of the Year. He's an advanced field to hit, showing the willingness to work counts and make 2-strike adjustments. He has good bat speed and strength. So he played some third base in the past. He's destined to left field or first base. He can post solid 60-yard dash times, but plays more as a fringy runner, and he possesses similar arm strength. So he sounds like a guy, who showed some stuff, and they just took him just to see if they hit on him. Now, lastly, he was a number 17th ranked player in the draft. He was taken 10th overall by Washington, Sever King. He's shortstop, third baseman, outfielder. 21 years old, 6 foot, bats right, ETA is 2027. He had a 47-game hitting streak in 2022 to 2023, slashing 411, 457, 699 with 11 homers and 13 steals as a sophomore. He won MVP accolades in the Valley League in 2022, and with the U.S. Collegiate National Team in the Cape Cod League last summer, he was very good. So he excels at putting the ball in play with a compact right-handed stroke geared for hitting line drives to all fields. He needs to improve his plate discipline. He makes a lot of weak contact because of it, because he chases too many balls. While he has added 20 pounds since arriving in college and has impressive bat speed, pros and flat stroke may not be conductive to more than 12 to 15 homers per year. He has well above average speed, solid arm strength. He's a versatile defender. So opened the season as a center fielder before settling at a third base. He's also seen action at shortstop and second base. So he'd have the most pro value at shortstop, though he's merely average there and would need to polish up his actions throwing accuracy. So he's solid at other sports and may fit best in the outfield because his hands are just okay. So, but still
All right.
impressive.
Perfect. Thank you, John. That was NL East, Pauline's prospect powwow. I wonder how some of these guys will turn out.
We'll have to
We'll
do
figure it
like
out.
a year in check.
Yeah, like a where are they now type deal.
Just a little quick to see if they went up or down. Where are they?
But let's go on to our weekly series highlight, where we highlight a series from this upcoming week that we think has some type of significance, such as Yankees hosting the Royals, a possible playoff matchup. Yankees had a soft schedule, weren't able to really capitalize on it. They're now a game and a half ahead of Baltimore, which is, not where you want to be with who you were playing. But Kansas City being a possible playoff team, you want to see how you stack up against another team that you could see in October. And as of now, they won the first game of that series. So they just got to keep that rolling.
Yeah, for me, bringing it back to a matchup we talked about a bit earlier, and that is the Texas Rangers going to Seattle to play the Mariners. It's a huge series for Seattle. And to be honest, if Texas still thinks that they're getting back to the wild card, it's a big series for them as well. You talked about Kumar Rocker. He's making his debut in the opener of that series on Thursday. Should be exciting. Big rivalry game there. Seattle, they have to start winning some games if they're going to catch Houston or get back into the wild card race for that matter. So, some work to be done for both of these teams. Should be exciting.
I'm going to do my weekly series highlights and be the Dodgers and the Braves, because I think this is a really important game for just the NL National League in general, because, Dodgers lose a few here. Phillies win stuff. Phillies, take first place, get home field advantage in the playoffs. Braves can catch some ground on the Mets here. This is a huge series with a lot of implications.
All right. That's going to do it here for us. Corey, Jason, John, Pauline, Ben Mandel. This has been the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. We'll revisit next week. We'll talk some more predictions, AL, NL MVP, Cy Youngs, possibly some Rookie of the Years, because not every award is as, guaranteed as you would think between the MVPs, which should be Judge and Ohtani, no matter what the media tries to tell you.
Definitely 100% Judge.
See, I think it's funny that the media tries to say that Bobby Witt has a better chance than Lindor does.
But this is something that we're going to get really into next week, because I think it's a really fascinating conversation. But that's going to do it here for us. Again, Corey, Jason, John, Pauline, Ben Mandel. This has been the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Signing off.